Okay, we'll begin in 1 Kings. We're going to take a look at the last half of chapter 8. We didn't quite finish that. The booklets that are in the back are for Sunday morning, 1 Timothy. So they're there for you to have something to prepare for the class Sunday morning that Adam will be teaching. I'm excited about that class and especially the books of 1st and 2nd Timothy. All right, so 1 Kings chapter 8. You will remember that this section here has to do with the dedication of the temple and Solomon's prayer. We have already discussed that a number of passages within chapter 8, the importance of keeping covenant. Solomon talks about keeping covenant and steadfast love, and talks about how God dwells with them and the benefits of God dwelling with him. And then skip on down then to verse 53. And at the end of the prayer, now Solomon, as many titles to this go, gives a benediction here. Primarily, Solomon indicates God's purposes for us and for his people back at that time. And you notice some of the things then that he says in this part of the text. So verse 53, he says, for you separated them, that is, of course, Israel, from among all the peoples of the earth to be your heritage, as you declared through Moses your servant when you brought our fathers out of Egypt, O Lord God. You have separated us to be your heritage. Anybody know what that means? It's a mean for God to take his people for his heritage. Ah, good. Your version says for his inheritance. And that's what it is. Good. So he's taking his people for his inheritance. If you think about this in a different way, you think in terms of, look at all that God is doing. What does God get out of this? He gets an inheritance. He gets us as his heritage. Now, the book of Ephesians mentions this in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 11, and also in verse 18. And it is interesting that it depends on the translation that you're using, how that comes out. But Ephesians chapter 1, you might take a look at that. There, first in verse 11, in him we have obtained an inheritance. Now that's the way ESV renders that, but some of the older versions show that can also be translated his heritage. And in fact, we're noticing that in the American Standard Version, in whom also we were made a heritage, the riches of the glory of his inheritance in the saints. And so you look at these two verses, verse 11 and then down at verse 18, ESV has that a little more the same way. Having eyes of your hearts enlightened, that you may know what is the hope to which he has called you, what are the riches of his glorious inheritance in the saints. So we become his inheritance, his heritage from what he's done.
Used to, when you ask somebody what his heritage was, you were actually not asking him if he got a lot of money from his grandfather or father. What you're asking him is, what kind of character did they teach you? Did they instill a work ethic? Did they give you the values that you then will pass on to your children? Your heritage. And I think it's kind of that way.
Yeah.
God gives us a great heritage.
And we become that because he's produced that in us. Good. That's a great explanation. So anyway, you can see these glimpses from the Old Testament into what the people of Israel never become, but God's intention. And now in the New Testament, what he says we have become his inheritance or his heritage. And that's again a pretty cool picture. And there's a number of things like that here in this next section from 54 down to verse 66. And I'd like you to pick out some things here that you see that are important. First off, let's just start here. Verse 55, and he stood and blessed all the assembly of Israel with a loud voice, and said, Blessed be the Lord who has given rest to his people Israel. According to all that he promised, not one word has failed of all his good promise, which he spoke by Moses his servant. The Lord our God be with us, as he was with our fathers. May he not leave us or forsake us, that he may incline our hearts to him, to walk in all his ways, and to keep his commandments, his statutes, his rules, which he commanded our father. Let these words of mine with which I have pleaded before the Lord be near to the Lord our God day and night, and may he maintain the cause of his servant and the cause of his people Israel as each day requires, that all the peoples of the earth may know that the Lord is God, there is no other. Let your heart therefore be wholly true to the Lord our God, walking in his statutes and keeping his commandments as it is this day. All right, what's some of your observations about that, especially coming out of the mouth of Solomon when you know what his future is? What are some of the things you notice in what he says that still are in existence today and something that is fulfilled in us today? And we see this first one, God promising a rest, and we've talked about that in Hebrews 4 before. But what are some of the other things that you see here?
I just noticed there in verse 58, where for him personally, he prays, incline my heart to you. But then later on, it says specifically that his wives turned his heart away.
And it's a really interesting emphasis here, and I noticed that as I was studying, there's a lot of emphasis on your heart. And Solomon talks about we need to incline our hearts to God, and all of us need to do that, and we want God to incline his heart toward us. So there's a deep connection there, and yet, and not too long, Solomon will actually turn his heart away from God. There's a lot when we read in the Kings, and when God evaluates kings, he's going to evaluate their heart, not just their actions. Because there'll be a lot of kings who he will say things like, they did what was right in the sight of the Lord, but not with a whole heart. And there'll be statements like that and warnings like that. And this is going to come up then with Solomon as well. What else do you see here that Solomon pleads for that is still our promise today?
He will not leave us or forsake us.
Yeah, verse 57, he's not going to, he says, the Lord our God will be with us, as he was with our fathers. May he not leave us or forsake us. Anybody know where that is in the New Testament? Hebrews 13, verse 5 and 6. Hebrews 13, 5 and 6. Anybody know where else that is in the Old Testament? That's already been mentioned in the Old Testament. Joshua, good. When God speaks to Joshua in Joshua chapter 1, God says, I'll be with you. I will never forsake you. I'll never leave you. And Hebrew writer quotes those very verses in Hebrews 13, 5 and 6. Let your life be free of covetousness and all that, and do not fear what man will do to you, because God will never leave you and never forsake you. So those promises have always been there. In the Great Commission, go make disciples of all nations, etc., etc. And then the very last verse of Matthew, and behold, and that word behold is important, behold, I am with you, even to the end of the world. The great promises that Jesus gives all of us. I don't think we stress that enough in our personal lives, think about that enough, and realize There isn't anything more important than that, is there? If God's with you, as Paul says in Romans 8:31, who can be against you? Pretty good. Okay? So those are the kinds of things that we need. Anybody see anything else in this text that fits with this? Yeah.
Another kind of purpose statement that relates to us too in verse 60, that all the people will know.
Yeah. Solomon understands God's ultimate purpose. It's not just about a personal salvation. We need to remember that. It's not just a personal salvation. The gospel, as I gave in a lesson a week ago or so, goes far beyond a personal salvation. The gospel preached is not a plan of salvation. It is a story of salvation. It is a story of what God does with his people. And so in this case, we are there so that all the peoples of the earth will know the Lord is God. There is no other God. So all the way back to the beginning, right? God creates us as icons, image bearers. And we are to bear that image throughout the world so the knowledge of God fills the world. Isaiah 11 verse 9 states that purpose as well. A lot of emphasis on that. Okay? So you see that. How about verse 61 too? Let your heart therefore be wholly true. Later God's going to say about Solomon's heart, it was not wholly true for me. That strong warning again, but here's Solomon saying these words. You just wish you had a recorder and you could record it, and one of his servants walk up to him when he turned his heart away and said, listen to this, you said this, and you're now doing just the opposite. So, very, very strong thing. All right, so you see all of those things, some of the same things that we've mentioned here. Get on down here past this. You need to notice the sacrifices that are offered in verse 63. People who comment on this talk about, my, 22,000 oxen, 120,000 sheep. Now, this is over a period of time. You may remember what feast it was? Feast of Tabernacles, okay? And Feast of Tabernacles begins on what day of what month? I didn't ask if it was fall, spring, or summer. What month and day? Seventh month. What day? 15th day. How long does it last? 7 days. 7 days. The 8th day is a holy convocation day. In it you will do no work, to quote, unquote. And so this is this feast. So these sacrifices are over this long period of time. And when you consider the amount of people and you consider, the amount of servants and all that's going on here, you can go, okay, I kind of get it. That's a lot of animals. Of course, they're eating most of these too. These would be fellowship offerings and things that would be eaten in a ceremonial feast. Okay? All right, so all of that offered. You will notice then in verse 66, he actually says, on the 8th day he sent the people away, and they blessed the king and went to their homes, joyful and glad of heart for all the goodness that the Lord had shown to David his servant and to his people Israel. When you read anywhere in the prophets and the Psalms, you see this over and over again. What is the reason for rejoicing, joy, and singing? It's always, look what God has done. Look at the greatness of God. Look at what He's provided us. When we sing songs, we should always remember we are singing because we are rejoicing in what God has done. We're not just simply liking pretty music. And God is not up there going, boy, do I enjoy pretty music. Those people sure do sing nice. No, he's looking for a heart that is expressing the joy that what God has done. So very important principle that is given. All right, any thoughts or questions on what we've seen in chapter 8?
I shared with you before our class tonight, the only thing we learn from history, we don't learn from history.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be careful, I know I do, when you study these Bible characters, they're not perfect. And we look at them at a very critical eye and ask, how could they do that? The question should be, how can we, knowing
That's right.
the mistakes that they made, that sometimes we don't learn from them as well.
And that is a really important principle, and one of the things we want to hopefully have time to get into tonight if we get to chapter 11. But one of the questions we need to always consider, look at who Solomon is right now. I mean, he's pretty amazing. The things he's saying are fantastic. His dedication, his love for God's kingdom is quite evident. All that he does is to exalt God. It's really is amazing. And then you get to chapter 11. He will live about the first 24 years of his life doing this. And then the last 16 years of his life, it's going to turn south. And we have to ask the question, just like Chad said, how's that happen? How do you go from this to a person that, as far as we know, we will not see in that eternal kingdom? He's not going to be there. What a sad, sad thing to think about.
It's kind of interesting, too, the narrative is almost setting him up a little bit as a priest in some of the ways it talks. It seems like by him,
Yeah.
he's kind of giving these Samuel-type speeches.
Very priestly, shepherdly.
Yeah, so it's very much a type of Jesus, the priest king, is
Absolutely.
in God's presence, kind of intercessing.
Yeah, you keep getting little glimpses of, man, this just sounds like the King of Kings. You know, he's just amazing of what he's done. And we get to chapter 9 and 10 that he will be considered the greatest king in the whole world. And everybody is amazed at his wisdom, and everybody wants to come and listen to him. It's very Messiah-like in so many ways. And yet he will lose his soul. And that is really something. So if we might just briefly right there just say, it really emphasizes how what you are today will not be there tomorrow unless you are watching carefully yourself. You're constantly moving toward God because it's so easy to drift. It's so easy to slip. So it's tremendous warning. Okay, so we're going on chapter 9. Here is God's second appearance to Solomon. Again, just such a beautiful picture here. Let's just notice the first 5 verses. As soon as Solomon had finished building the house of the Lord and the king's house and all that Solomon desired to build, the Lord appeared to Solomon a second time, as he appeared to him at Gibeon. And the Lord said to him, I have heard your prayer and your plea, which you which you have made before me. I have consecrated the house for you that you have built. By putting my name there forever. My eyes and my heart will be there for all time. And as for you, if you will walk before me as David your father walked with integrity of heart and uprightness, doing according to all that I have commanded you and keeping my statutes and my rules, then I will establish your royal throne over Israel forever, as I promised David your father, saying, you shall not lack a man on the throne of Israel. So you start with God's promise. What are some of the things that God tells him he must do? And of course, what God is going to do for him. What are some of the things that you see that stands out there? I mean, there's the typical things, obey me, etc., but what are some of the things that stand out?
Integrity of heart.
There you go. Good. Yeah. Not just do the commandments and stuff. Integrity of heart. I want to know your heart is purely for me. I don't know if this has happened in your life. Probably most likely most of us, if not all of us, have had this, where we, quote unquote, serve the Lord in the sense of we do the things we're supposed to do, but not necessarily with the whole heart, not necessarily with the integrity of our heart, not because that is deeply our passion and love. It's easy to do. And religious people all through the Bible, including Sadducees, Pharisees, and et cetera, have done that very thing. So, how do you fix that? Yeah. How do you get that? Yeah, well, you got to start with a change, right? How do you change it? Something I'm going to have to do, though, to let God change it. What am I going to have to do? Yes, the power is going to come from God, but I've still got an action to have to take.
You have to open your heart towards God. Let him in, appeal to him, continually. You see the thought is like David just like continually coming back to God, even when he messes up.
Okay.
Just continually coming back and appealing to him.
There is a heart of, I need to seek him. I need to turn my heart toward him. I need to pray, plead with him to help. Okay, draw near to. What's the details to draw near to him? What's it going to take? You're up too far. Yeah.
You have to realize your state compared to his state.
Okay.
And that's really, I think, where it starts. Because once you realize you desperately need him, that's when you do start drawing closer. Where's the passion in my heart? Where's the treasure? What you learn from Solomon is it doesn't take long. The treasure is not God. The treasure is what he builds. The treasure is wives. The treasure is all these things, but God's not his treasure. And Jesus said, where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be. So you got to make that your treasure. So you have to know God more deeply. You have to start with a change of heart. But what helps you change your heart is knowing him more. So, it takes by yourself. That's what changed me. I decided I got to sit down with just me and him, because nobody else is going to get me there. But I got to sit down with me and him, and I've got to read and study every day so that I learn about him, so that I'll begin to love him and get passionate toward him. Yes?
I'm just going to say, he's told you everything you need. It's in his word.
Yeah.
And you've got to study it, read it, and delve into it.
That's just exactly what Jesus said in John 6:44. He pointed out, no one comes to me unless the Father who sent me draws him. I'll learn and be taught by the Father. That's the way he draws us.
It's interesting the way he points out obedience, discipline, as a way to serve God forever. And as you continue obeying God, you're driven to serve God forever.
Yeah. I've got to act. I've got to obey. And that heart takes some time, especially if I have lived where I'm not wholly on for him. I've lived for myself. I've lived for other kinds of things. And when those things happen, that doesn't change overnight. It is a process. Man, we got to get to it. Because if you don't, the world just tugs you all the further deep. You got 50-pound weights on your feet, and you're trying to get above water, and you get rid of the weights.
It always starts with a decision.
Good. That's right. You got to make a decision.
Make that commitment.
Yeah. And don't say you're going to do it tomorrow. Now. It is urgent, because tomorrow you may not have that feeling of urgency. This is a warning that we see over and over again in Scripture. And so God is appearing to Solomon, and he's doing everything he can to get him to understand what he needs to do if he wants to preserve the condition that he's in. Now, look at verses 6 through 9. But if you turn aside from following you or your children, or do not keep my commandments and my statutes that I've set before you, but go and serve other gods and worship them, then I will cut off Israel from the land that I have given them, and the house that I have consecrated for my name I will cast out of my sight. And Israel will become a proverb and a byword among all peoples, and this house will become a heap of ruins. That was a pretty wealthy house that'll become a heap of ruins. Everyone passing by will be astonished and will hiss, and they will say, why has the Lord done thus to this land and to this house? Then they will say, because they abandoned the Lord their God, who brought their fathers out of the land of Egypt, and laid hold on other gods and worshiped them and served them. Therefore the Lord has brought all this disaster on them. God is really plain. You turn away from this, Solomon, and your people, and this house, I don't care if it's worth $1 billion trillion, it's going to be in ruins. I don't care. And what did they say in Jeremiah's day? The temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. God won't destroy it. My people have been destroyed for lack of knowledge. Jesus entered the city of Jerusalem. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem. How I would have gathered you as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you would not. Behold, your house is left to you desolate. You're done. Man, just eerie, chilling words. And less than 40 years later, not one stone to be left on top of another that would not be torn down by the Romans. God's serious. And we, like you mentioned, obedience. Obedience. Integrity of heart. This is what it takes. There's no halfway with God. Can't serve him a little bit. This is just what's emphasized time and time and time again. And yet it's so easy for us to flirt with compromise. Right.
Is there an echo in that, in the rejection of the Lord by the Jews too? Because
Sure.
when they said, let this be on us and our children, and look at how the world has looked
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
them to this day.
Yeah, and he said that. This is simply repeating the curses that were mentioned in Deuteronomy 28 and Leviticus 26. You become a hiss and a byword to all nations, and I still just can't believe that continues to go on. It boggles my mind with people who don't even understand that. Emily.
I think it's really important that God brings this out again, specifically at the dedication of the temple. And it's like at the very beginning of this like physical manifestation of God. It's like you say it's the second, but it's really one of the first that we're seeing, and the first that's really permanent. God says very clearly, if you follow me and if you walk in my ways, I will establish your house. I will be here. I will be with you. You will succeed. And if you don't, you will be cursed. You will be like that and you will not be in this land, let alone in this house of glory.
It's a pretty complicated little sermon here, isn't it?
So complicated, but it's really fascinating because this is a promise, but it's also a prophecy that has been said in Deuteronomy and Leviticus. But I read that and I see human history, up till now, and I see Jesus in these words, and I see a lot of the exile and the return, and I see the rebuilding of the temple and the elders weeping and crying and saying, this is nothing like it was before. And if they listen to what God said here, there would be no question when Jesus came about, but temple of the Lord, temple of the Lord, he would never destroy it. Yes, he would.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a history of it, and it was warned over and over again. Yeah, pretty amazing to see that. All right, good. Then in chapter 9, verse 10 to 28, we see a list of the works of Solomon. I'm not going to spend much time on this. Just want to note a few things. If you look down at verses 10 through 14, the first thing you will notice is Hiram, who is king of Tyre. I mean, he did so many things for Solomon. They were partners in the building of the houses that Solomon built. And verse 11 actually says that he supplied Solomon with cedar and cypress timber and gold as much as he desired. And King Solomon gave to Hiram 20 cities in the land of Galilee. But when Hiram came from Tyre to see the cities that Solomon had given him, they did not please him. Therefore he said, "What kind of cities are these that you have given me, my brother?" So they called the land. They are called the land of Kabul to this day. Kabul meaning worthless. Worthless. So here's Hiram. He gets a complaint, after all that he had done for Solomon, and it doesn't seem like Solomon does anything about it. These cities you gave me, they're junk. What are you giving this to me after all I've done? Now he continues to work with him, but those are interesting words that you see there. And notice verse 14, Hiram had sent to the king 120 talents of gold. So again, lots and lots of gold, 144 ounces of gold at $3,000 an ounce. You want to add that up, you'll see a lot of money. So this really emphasized the amount that he has given. Then he gives an account of the forced labor, but makes the point that this forced labor comes from, down in verse 20, all the people who were left of the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, who were not of the people of Israel, their descendants who were left after them in the land, whom the people of Israel were unable to devote to destruction. These Solomon drafted to be slaves, and so they are to this day. But of the people of Israel, Solomon made no slaves. They were soldiers, they were officials, his commanders, his captains, his chariot commanders, and horsemen. Okay, well, regardless, you might remember when God, in the days of Samuel, said, here's what's going to happen when you have a king. He's going to take your people for your all this stuff. And of course, that's what Solomon had done. He just grew his government bigger and bigger by taking people from their farms and families and things to make his kingdom great. So you see little glimpses of some of that silliness as well. I can't help but mention also down in verse 28, Hiram had a fleet of seamen, and they took ships to Ophir. I don't know exactly where that is, and brought from there gold, 420 talents of gold, 75 pounds a talent. So the gold of Ophir, 504 ounces of gold, or 16 tons of gold, 31,500 pounds of gold. Unimaginable. And that's not all. There's more that are going to be added to it as we read in chapter 10. So you see just the opulence, and it keeps mentioning how Solomon has all of this, and maybe glimpses of God's eternal kingdom, the riches and wealth of it. Maybe that's intended here as well. But you do see all of this with Solomon. Now the visit of the Queen of Sheba, and some more about Solomon's wealth. So we see this in chapter 10. She traveled about 1,500 miles, by the way, to get to this. And we see in Verse 2, she came to Jerusalem with very great retinue, with camels bearing spices and very much gold and precious stones. When she came to Solomon, she told him all that was on her mind, and Solomon answered all her questions. There was nothing hidden from the king that he could not explain to her. And when the queen of Sheba had seen all the wisdom of Solomon, the house that he had built, the food of his table, the seating of his officials, and the attendance of his servants, their clothing, his cupbearers, and his burnt offering that he offered at the house of the Lord, there was no more breath in her. And she said to the king, the report was true that I heard in my own land of your words and your wisdom, but I did not believe the reports until I came and with my own eyes had seen it. And behold, the half was not told me. Your wisdom and prosperity surpass the report that I heard. Happy are your men, happy are your servants who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom. And then blessed be the Lord God, who has delighted in you and set you on the throne of Israel. And so she gives honor then to God in all of this. Take a look at Luke 11:31. What does Jesus say to the people of his day concerning the Queen of Sheba? I remember. Pardon? Yeah. So if the Queen of Sheba traveled from the end of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon, now a greater than Solomon is here, and you guys are rejecting him. So it was a strong warning to the people in the days of Jesus who were rejecting him, that they were not going to see the prophets and everyone else and the Queen of Sheba in the kingdom of God. They would be cast out because they had rejected someone greater than Solomon that the queen had traveled so far to hear. So the question is not just to look at that. Well, what's the question for us? Do we desire the Lord with that kind of intensity, that we would travel to the end of the earth, from the end of the earth, to hear the wisdom of the Lord and to come and learn from him? We read that. I've read that for years so easily. Yeah, you crummy people there in the days of Jesus. Well, how much am I pursuing him? How much am I interested in knowing him? We can be pretty lax. Again, these passages keep coming up this way.
There's also a lesson here in that Solomon's fulfilling what he said in that prayer at the end there, that all the peoples of the earth are going to come to know who God is. Her result after she looks at all this is blessed be
Look at God. That's right. Good. Yeah, this is the point. That was one of the points of the temple, that God was dwelling with Israel, God was with them, God would protect them, God would provide for them, all of this, and the people of the world would see this and be drawn to God in his temple. We are now the temple of the Lord. That same thing is to be happening with us, and how God is drawn to God. The world is drawn to God through our examples and through what we are to do as being image bearers for the Lord. So very, very strong emphasis that is given there. Notice her surprise. What was she surprised about? Yeah, it was all true, and she says, I only knew the half of it. It was more than I could even imagine. I didn't really believe it would be as much as what they had said. And so she is truly amazed by that, and then gives honor and blessing to God. I thought I might notice with you verse 10. It speaks again of, she gives the king 120 talents of gold, 9,000 pounds of gold, 4.5 tons of gold. Again, just amazing amount. But then also spices and precious stones. I was hearing somebody the other day on the radio as I was traveling to a class pointing out we do not appreciate salt, pepper, spices.
People paid wages in spices back in ancient times. Just wasn't laying around. You didn't go to Trader Joe's and have a spice rack that you picked up. Pardon? Yeah, and they'd go to war over it. That's right. Who controlled this? And so the just this little mention of she brought all these spices. Wow, this is valuable. Very, very valuable. Paid big, big money for spices. People traveled the world to find spices. Yeah. I know when I cook, I like spices.
Yeah, just noted kind of in verse 8, it strikes me almost the tragedy of what she says there. Your men are happy, your servants are happy.
Yeah.
And like, clearly this is just a time of unparalleled wealth and prosperity and like contentment and satisfaction.
Right.
And to see in less than another decade or so from now, it's all ripped away.
Which reminds us, why is it there? Because of God. Not because you're so brilliant, not because you're so this or that. It's because of God. It's all because of God. And if you don't follow God, you're going to lose it. You're going to lose every bit of it. So real powerful words that he gives there in all of that. You know, a little bit of Solomon's wealth in verses 14 through 29. A few things again. You have here 666 talents of gold come into his palace every year. As verse 15 says, besides the other thing. So that's 50,000 pounds of gold. So we've been adding this up here over and over again, him talking about the amount of gold that comes into his coffers. That's just every year. 50,000 pounds of gold every year. So remember that when his fine son Rehoboam takes the throne, Shishak of Egypt is going to come in and take it all away and take it to Egypt. So if you ever wanted to on a gold hunt, maybe you can go searching Egypt. I don't know if it's hanging around there somewhere, but that's a lot of gold. And he took it all away, and from that time on, good old Rehoboam, brilliant Rehoboam, had bronze that he used instead of gold when it came to parts of the temple. Well, just breaks your heart. But it will be a reminder when we read Ecclesiastes, as Solomon will bemoan the fact that when he dies, what kind of son will take his stuff and what will he do with it? Yeah, well, there you go. That's it. In verse 21, you will notice that he says that silver was considered as nothing in the days of Solomon. So these drinking vessels are all made like that, but it was considered, wasn't considered anything. Down in verse 27, the king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stone or stones, and he made cedar as plentiful as a sycamore of Shephelah. So again, I mean, it's so what you can just imagine. You're walking around and there's silver, and you just kind of go. It's like, whatever. Silver, that's nothing. That's not worth anything. And that's how much wealth was going on then at that time. So we, anyway, see all of that. And then verse 23 and 24, he's Solomon's fame. Thus King Solomon excelled all the kings of the earth in riches and in wisdom, and the whole earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom, which God had put in his hands. And they all brought presents, verse 25, and he then gathered in verse 26 chariots and horsemen, and 14,000 chariots, 12,000 horsemen. He wasn't supposed to do that, but there was a lot of things Solomon wasn't supposed to do that he did. Multiplying horses, multiplying wives, making himself rich as could be, and things like that. But he did that anyway. Even imported horses from Egypt, etc. Okay,
So that leads us up then to chapter 11, and of course there's going to be a major change when we get to chapter 11. But imagine being in exile when this book would be read to you. You're in Babylonian exile, you're in Assyrian exile or whatever, and 1 Kings is completed, and you read about what your nation used to have and where it's come from. And now you sit as a slave, and here was the way the nation could have been if you had served God. That's the message we need to get. All right, so we'll take a look at chapter 11, 12, and 13 next week. Read that. You see a major change now in the kingdom, and of course, all because of Solomon's disobedience.